All right. Well, welcome, everyone. Thank you. And thank you for joining us for today's virtual hearing on artificial intelligence and access to justice in 2025. It's hosted by the New York State Association's President's Committee, New York State Bar Association's President's Committee on Access to Justice. I'm serving as the co-chair, along with our vice chair, Lynn Poster Zimmerman, and our co-chair, Kathleen Sweet, who is going to be the president of the Bar Association starting June 1st. Um, and our next co-chair will be Taya Grace, who has been elected as president-elect. We're honored to have you join us for this important and timely discussion on how AI is reshaping the legal landscape, especially in its potential to expand access to justice for underserved communities. Thank you for being here. We look forward to an engaging and thought-provoking discussion. I wanted to just introduce you to our first panel. We have Ronald J. Jesus. He's a former United States magistrate judge and expert in electronic information and AI in law. He serves on AI committees for both New York and New Jersey Bar Associations and is a prolific author on legal technology and governance. We also have Scott B. Reams. He's of counsel at Cravath, Swaine and Moore, where he leads data analytics and e-discovery efforts. With a background in tech, he focuses on integrating AI into legal practices and serves on several court modernization and AI advisory committees. From the National Center for State Courts, we also have Aubrey Souza and Zachary Sarno. Aubrey is the principal court management consultant at the National Center for State Courts, specializing in tech-driven court access solutions. Her work includes developing tools for self-represented litigants and juvenile defense. Zachary Zarno is the Deputy Managing Director of the Access to Justice team at the National Center for State Courts, where he leads national initiatives to improve legal access. A former Peace Corps volunteer, he hosts Tiny Chats and has secured major funding for eviction diversion programs. And for panel, we also have Jeffrey Cox. He is the Director of Global Content Marketing at VLEX and Chair of the Board at Bay Area Legal Services in Florida. He blends legal expertise and content strategy to promote AI-driven legal service innovations. We're going to get started, and our first panelist is Judge Hedges.
Hi.
Hi.
First off, thank you for having me here today, everyone, including the New York State Bar. Should I just launch into these questions, or do you want to pose them, or
Sure,
how would we like to do this?
sure. So one of the main things that we did today was we with the panel, we provided three prompts. What are you excited about AI and access to justice? What are you worried about with AI and access to justice? And what's one thing that the our legal service organizations and legal service communities can be doing with artificial intelligence that we're probably not, or maybe if we're doing, maybe we can be doing it better. So each of the panelists will be speaking to these three questions, but I also gave them freedom to talk about whatever they want with AI and access to justice because they're the experts. So Ron, why don't you go ahead and you could just start with the first prompt. What are you excited about?
What I'm excited about is that AI might be useful to defender organizations and the like in providing services to clients. I do want to mention, though, as we begin, a concern I've had in this area for a while, and that's making sure we're talking about the same thing when we talk about artificial intelligence. Artificial intelligence has been around for a long time. More than anything else, it can be used to compile vast amounts of material, organize them in certain ways, and make those available to whoever the reader, for lack of a better word, is. The central part of AI these days that's exciting everyone is generative AI, which is the phrase implies means something new is being created or generated out of data that whatever the platform has is using. So number one, I think we need to get our definitions correct. And then when you're beyond that, I think legal aid attorneys and individuals who may be proceeding on their own can, if nothing else, fill out forms that make sense in the way they're laid out and the like. And if it's an interactive tool, the tool might be able to go back to the person filling out the form and get more information. That's what I see AI being used for now with regard to access to justice. You may go a little past it and there may be opportunities for different platforms to suggest causes of action and the like. I think we need to be careful about that because of unauthorized practice of law concerns, depending on the jurisdiction you're in. But that's what I'm excited about. So should I go to the next questions or do you want to ask or how do we go?
Um, yeah, why don't you go ahead to the next question? What are you worried about with AI and access to justice?
What I'm worried about with AI and access to justice are individuals who don't have internet access or reliable internet access. During the pandemic, we learned that there were a number of platforms used by courts and the like that people could not access because, for example, they're in a rural area or they're a part of a disadvantaged population. And my concern is that we are going to be adopting these tools and everyone's not going to have access to them. The other thing that concerns me, and I know we're going to be talking about this or it's going to be coming up for a while, are hallucinations. Hallucinations show up even when lawyers send things in. There are a number of decisions already, probably around 100, that talk about attorneys getting in trouble because they submit hallucinations and some filings and the like. We've also seen that being done by experts. So that's a conversation attorneys and experts have to be having at some point. And we've seen instances where pro se litigants have sent in things that are contain hallucinations. So that and question of access to the technology are two things that concern me.
Okay. Before we continue, you mentioned AI generated forms as a promising tool. What safeguards do you think we should recommend to ensure these tools are used, effectively and ethically?
Well, number one, I think is we as lawyers need to exercise competence and understand the tool we're working with. And that probably goes back to my question about if you and I are having a conversation, what AI are we discussing? What are we
Yeah.
talking about? So we have to be competent to use the technology. We have to be concerned about confidentiality under Rule 1.6 because we have to be careful what we ask. For example, if we put a prompt into a tool, we may wind up waiving attorney-client privilege or losing attorney-client privilege. There's one decision out there now where a prompt has found to be fact work product, which raises questions in litigation, of course, about access and the like to it. So I think we as lawyers need to be concerned about competence, confidentiality, and I'll also go back and talk about supervision under Rule 5 and its subparts, because we have to be able to supervise junior associates who may be using a tool. We also may have to supervise the tool itself, which raises other questions.
Great. Thank you. You also mentioned, you highlighted that digital access is a barrier in some of your concerns. What do you think legal aid organizations and other institutions can be doing to help bridge that gap?
Well, the first thing I'll tell you, it's not the organizations, it's the funding agencies for the organizations.
Mhm.
And I know that there are legal aid societies and the like that aren't funded adequately, just
Mhm.
as some courts aren't funded adequately. So the first thing I would do is say, go and look at what the resources available are to you. Make sure you have the resources you need to communicate or to offer services or products to your constituents, for lack of a better phrase. And then from there, be careful what you do because you want to protect confidentiality and the like, and you want to make sure whoever's working with you as a expert or non-expert is minding the store, if you will, as far as confidentiality concerns.
Great. Thank you. Why don't we go on to the last thing? What do you think we should be doing with AI right now that maybe we're not, or could be doing better?
AI can do a lot of things now. Generative AI can do a lot of things now, can draft documents, do research, bearing in mind you've got the problem with hallucinations in there. Uh, I use the word democratize access to legal research or other research, review contracts and the like. Maybe you're looking for something for a client on how to draft a rent agreement or the like. There are ways to use AI and generative AI to search for those. Engage in risk assessment. We've seen that being used now. Put a prompt in that says with X, Y, and Z facts, being careful not to give away any privileged or confidential material. Tell me what the best X might be. Create chat box that the public can access. We're going to be seeing that more, I think, in the next few years since we've started having agentic AI, which has just hit the storm within the last, 2 or 3 months or so. So I think there are a lot of things we can use. I think it comes back to funding, I mentioned before, and I also think it goes back to being familiar with how to set these tools up so constituents can access them and use them.
Great, great. Thank you. I saw that you were involved in a panel or a training with a PLI on quantum computing. How is that going to relate to generative AI?
Quantum computing is going to throw a wrench into a lot of things we're doing now.
Mhm.
I think the immediate concern with quantum, from my point of view, is that most of the access controls we have now are going to be rendered obsolete.
Mhm.
So we're going to have to think of new ways to access materials and be able to protect what we're doing. So that's number one. Second big concern I think we're going to be seeing has to do with environmental issues, because all this technology needs a site to work from, and they're going to get hot.
Yeah.
So the question is, how are we going to protect the environment, and where are we going to be getting, for example, water sources or the
Yeah.
like for those tools? So I think it's going to be a profound effect. I'd say 3 or 4 years, we're going to really see it starting, although
Mhm.
it's beginning now, at least in the laboratory. And NIST is working on this now, and other agencies are. So we'll see where that goes.
Okay, I think we're at time, but if we have time at the end, I'd like to talk just some of the when you said it throwing a wrench into the access issues that we have now. I'm curious what you mean by that. Maybe if you could, maybe have a minute, if you could.
I think the concern realistically is that there are going to be new technologies out there. Some old ones are going to be relegated to, I don't know what to say, second tier
Okay,
organizations or the like, and
okay,
there's going to be a risk to get it.
okay. So you mean like a digital access issue is what you,
Yes.
okay. All right, no, I appreciate it. Thank you, Judge. Um, Next, we have, well, it looks like there's a question in the Q&A before we move on. For those among us who have lived through the transition from book research to Westlaw, what are the similarities between that era and this new transition using AI? Any helpful advice we can use from that prior experience? Maybe we could do that at the end, just so that maybe that might make sense, unless it was specific to this panelist. I mean, Judge, is there anything you can maybe just add in just to answer that question?
I think the immediate issue, if you're going to be using these different tools,
Mm-hmm.
how are you going to verify them to make sure that the tool is not giving you a hallucination?
Okay.
That's possible, but I don't have any other specifics to answer that question.
All right. No problem. Thanks, Judge. Next, we have Scott Reitz. Scott.
Hi, hi, Rez. Thanks so much to everybody. It's glad to be here. So I will address the three prompts, Rez, but I just wanted to give a few opening remarks before I do that.
Absolutely. However you
Uh,
want.
so first, let me say as a disclaimer, I'm a lawyer at Cravath, Swaine and Moore in the city, and my comments here are my own and don't reflect Cravath or our clients' views. With that said, you may be wondering why is a lawyer from Cravath at a panel on access to justice? Well, first of all, I care a lot about it. I'm very excited about how AI is going to impact it. But aside from that, my job here at Cravath is in part to help lead our AI efforts. So I've been working with a lot of our lawyers here and examining a lot of technologies. So hopefully have some insights to share from that might be useful to people. Secondly, I'm involved in a couple of different committees and commissions that have been looking at this issue for the New York State courts. So the co-chair of the New York Court Modernization Action Committee, which studied the impact of the pandemic on the New York court system, and one of the conclusions of that study was that New York courts needed to use technology a lot more effectively as a strategic asset, and AI is clearly going to be an important element of how courts do that. And then secondly, I'm on the committee on AI in the courts that the Unified Court System started last year, and so we're looking at a lot of these issues as well. So that's why I'm here. I think others on the panel can speak sort of more authoritatively to the nature of the justice gap. I think everybody here probably acknowledges that there is one. According to my research on it, different statistics, but it seems like somewhere between 80 and 90% of people who need legal services, can't get access to them, either can't afford them or there's some other reason for that. So clearly a huge problem. I guess one thing I would like to propose to the committee to consider is that if you think about AI and the justice gap, maybe you can think about it in sort of three different domains, which I think are fairly different. One is AI for litigants. I think this is probably what a lot of people think about with the access to justice gap. Like, how could pro se litigants, people without attorneys, be able to access AI services to give them information and help them answer legal questions or help resolve disputes in courts? It's obviously very important, and is one of three elements. But the other two I think are equally important. The other is AI for lawyers, right? So as AI makes us as lawyers more effective, I think one of the things that does is it makes it easier, more economical for us to serve more people, to solve more problems, and by doing that, help reduce the justice gap. So if we can take sort of the X number of lawyers that we have right now and make them all twice as effective, 3 times as effective as they are now in terms of what they can do, imagine what that could do to help reduce the justice gap. And then the third leg of the stool, I think, is AI for courts. Courts and decision-making bodies, not just state courts, but our arbitral proceedings or other types of proceedings. So how can AI be used to help resolve disputes more efficiently, more fairly, more effectively? That obviously could do quite a lot for access to justice as well. So those are just a few things to think about. In terms of the prompts, the questions that you posed, Rez, what am I excited about right now? I think, to me, big picture, what's really exciting about AI and the law is that it has enormous potential to reduce the costs of legal services. And I see that sort of fundamentally as, principal impediment to more people getting legal services. People simply just can't afford them. Lawyers are too expensive for so many of the things that people need legal services for. So if you can make lawyers more efficient, if you can take some of the information right now that is solely within the domain of trained lawyers and make that more accessible, you can solve a lot of the justice gap. What am I worried about? I think I'm probably most worried about the sort of unintended downstream consequences. I agree with Judge Hedges that issues like hallucination and the reliability of the data reliability of AI are really important questions. But I also think that this is going to be an evolving ecosystem, if you will.
Mhm.
AI is going to have tremendous impacts on the practice of law and on the legal industry, and we're sort of only beginning to understand what those may be. So, for example, you take the AI in courts example that I brought up.
Mhm.
You know, uh, we think about, oh, wouldn't it be great if courts could, you know, use AI and resolve disputes faster? Well, there's a couple of potential downstream problems with that. One is, what's going to happen when it's much easier for lawyers and litigants to file claims, to file motions, to, you know, to send papers to the courts? How are courts going to deal with that, you know, much larger, potentially much larger volume of cases and disputes and papers and motions that are brought before them? So there's sort of a you know, arms race, if you will, there, like the sort of demand for courts time versus their ability to process it. Secondly, think about, you know, in some types of disputes, it may actually have, you know, it may actually be harmful to litigants to move the case along even faster, right? There's some types of disputes, for example, housing dispute, where you know, having that time, you know, sort of the clock actually may operate to the advantage of somebody who's facing an eviction, right? Like
Yeah.
it's not a dispute necessarily that you want resolved in 24 hours for various reasons. And so, you know, we need to sort of think through what the implications of that might be. And then finally, the prompt, what's one thing that legal services organizations, you know, need to know that maybe they don't? I would say, you know, sort of my best advice for legal services organizations would be, you know, get AI into the hands of your lawyers. That's what we're doing at Cravath. That's what, you know, a lot of law firms are doing. I would expect that legal services organizations are starting to do this, but I think, you know, it's not something that you can sort of wait on. It Using AI for a lawyer is not necessarily the most natural thing. You have to know how to ask what it's good at, what it's not good at, how to get the information out of it that you need, how it can make you more effective at your job. The tools are still, you know, somewhat rudimentary, very very slick, but still a little bit rudimentary. But you know, we all as lawyers need to get on that learning curve
Mhm.
and move up it as fast as possible. And so investment today, even if you're not seeing sort of gains like in the immediate term in terms of productivity and your ability to serve clients, it's really critical, I think, to learning how this technology works, how it can work in your practice in order to make sure that you're prepared next year or the year after when we're seeing even more sophisticated capabilities. Um, so those are some initial thoughts. Happy to take questions from you, Rez, or from
Yeah, no,
the
that's
audience.
great. Thank you. It looks like there's a few questions coming in the Q&A. This looks like it's for all the panelists. There's the first one about any helpful advice to bridge the gap, you know, from you know, about, you know, going from books to computer research. Now this is computer research to AI. If there's any recommendations on that. The next one is the next question is, do panelists believe that one of the consequences for the AI push will be to reduce the value of the attorneys who provide services to the poor? Do any panel, you know, I guess if you think maybe Scott or
Yeah,
Judge, if you want to answer that.
I mean,
Go ahead,
personally,
Scott, you can start.
okay, I'll start. Personally, no, I don't. I think the opposite is true, right? Like I think that an experienced lawyer, like what AI can do right now is can, you know, sort of 90% of the time get through a lot of information and give you a pretty good answer, maybe a good start, right? That can be extremely helpful to an experienced lawyer. Um, and so I think that it puts a premium on sort of good experienced lawyers. If that's you, AI is your friend because it's going to just make you sort of more effective. So far from sort of undermining your value, I think it could actually increase your value because it could mean that you're able to, reach and represent a lot more clients across a lot more issues.
I agree with Scott as far as what AI would do to the legal profession and legal aid attorneys or the like. There's always going to be a need for an attorney to be creative and to look at whatever the tool provides. And, we're not at the point where AI is going to walk into a courtroom and take over argument. And I don't think that will ever happen. So I think there's a very important place for lawyers. I see AI as a tool to cut the lawyer's time from, I'm not going to say meaningless things, from rote things that are done in an office so the lawyer can concentrate more on using his or her brains to advance the interest of a client.
Thank you, Judge. Thank you, Scott. Scott, one question that I had, and I'm going to save the other questions for the end that might be coming through. Scott, one question I had for you. You said you're training you get into the hands of the attorneys. The IOLA fund here is for New York State is using the AI University and those things to try to get legal services organizations much more used to working with AI. Are there any trainings that your firm is focused on providing to your staff that we might be able to think about including or adding as a community?
Yeah, I mean, I guess we have sort of two flavors of trainings. One is sort of how do you use this particular tool, right? And so that's an important aspect of the training because some of these tools incredibly powerful, but not always obvious how you're going to use them in your practice. The other flavor of training is responsible use training. And so before we let any of our lawyers use any of the AI tools that we have on offer, they have to go through a responsible use training, which educates them about how it works, what its shortcomings are, what you shouldn't use it for.
Yeah.
Sort of all the no's and the do nots, so that we don't run afoul of sort of ethical legal problems.
Okay, great. Thank you, Scott. I think we'll move on to the next panels. So next, and thank you, Scott. Thank you, Judge. So next we have Aubrey Souza and Zach Zarno from the National Center for State Courts.
Thank you so much. And good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for spending your afternoon with us. Zach and I are part of the Access to Justice team at the National Center for State Courts, which is a nonprofit organization that provides guidance and supports to the state courts across the country. As implied by the name, we at NCSC spend most of our time thinking about courts, court functions, and court users, as opposed to maybe the direct service of legal aid or the private bar. And as part of the Access to Justice team, we think about people without lawyers, how they navigate the justice system. We do regularly engage and collaborate with legal aid partners in the private bar, but our thoughts today are going to be framed by our work with the courts. And Zach and I are going to combine our time and remarks. I'm going to just keep rolling and start off with some of the thoughts on the promise of potential, and then we'll get to hear from Zach on some of the 2 of the 3 questions. So starting with the promise, I think one of the most exciting developments at the intersection of artificial intelligence and access to justice is simply how the potential of AI is promoting modernization of the legal system. While the law has traditionally evolved slowly, AI is accelerating excitement about innovation, user-centered design, and systemic reform. And AI has been part of inviting the courts and the justice partners to consider, are there new ways to deliver services? Are there new paths for people to engage with legal systems, the information, and those providers? These AI tools, in particularly large language models, they have the potential to expand access to information and the resources that have been purposely designed for people navigating the legal system without a lawyer. So creating a resource for non-experts can be challenging if you yourself are an expert. If you use the legal terms and you innately understand the language in the system, translating it into a simple, plain language for people without legal knowledge is actually incredibly challenging because it's natural, it's innate to you. But AI tools can offer that first pass assistance for brainstorming and turning the complex legal information into plain language explanations, which then you can continue to work on and make sure that they are correct. Courts have also then begun to experiment with actually using AI tools, things like AI chatbots, as mentioned, AI guided interviews. Those can be used to help create custom legal information that's specific to the individual using them or help them with their document assistance. And by offering tailored information for those complex formats or complex processes in a format that's accessible at any time of day, written in clear, simple language, you're providing more access to the information and creating not just an information sheet, but it's custom to their situation or the questions they have. At the same time, AI can also then be a valuable support for overburdened court staff and legal aid providers by helping them triage cases or assisting in the review of the pleadings. Some of the early panels started talking about how it can support the internal staff. And when used carefully, AI can be part of freeing up staff to focus on the high impact, nuanced work and potentially improve both the quality and the operational efficiency. Sometimes talk about practicing at the top of your license. But the keyword there is carefully. And I'm going to hand it over to Zach to talk about exactly what we want to be careful about.
Thanks, Aubrey. Yeah, I'm going to lean into my natural proclivities towards curmudgeonhood and talk about some of our worries regarding AI and access to justice. And we do have some. There are some concerns around risks when this is deployed without thoughtful design, when it's not got consistent oversight, when we don't understand its limitations, and when we're not employing rigorous study and evaluation. And to do this, I'm going to offer you 5 thoughts to sort of unpack that and explain. First is, Aubrey and I get asked a question all the time that is the wrong question. And that question is, how should we use AI? And the right question to ask is, what problem am I trying to solve? Because if you start with a goal or a problem to solve, then you can ground yourself in the decision-making ahead. And I'll give you an example. If your goal, say, is to provide court users with 100% accurate information about how to navigate an eviction case and process in your court, then you can work backwards from there to ID the correct tool or method or technology. Could AI help with that? Maybe. But if you consider things by starting with your goal or your problem, you might also consider other options, like a process map or a guided interview or a really good website or an informational video. And each of those has pros and cons, just like an AI chatbot, but which could also potentially help. But by starting with your goal, you can compare the pros, the cons, the risks, the costs, the sustainability across all those tools because you know what you're trying to achieve. And starting from that proposition that you must use AI flattens that decision-making and artificially limits your options, many of which are more reliable, cheaper, less risky, and easier to build and maintain than AI. And from our point of view, you get bonus points if you actually do some research. And instead of assuming you know what your court users want, you ask them. And you look at data to determine what tool might be best. And that's a very different approach than just starting with, we got to use AI for some reason. Second is that while the outputs of large language models may appear authoritative, and we've talked about this a little bit, these tools are fundamentally probabilistic systems not grounded in fact, but in patterns of language. And the susceptibility of hallucinations or miscalculation can be really dangerous if relied upon by individuals without the ability to assess those AI outputs. And this can be particularly troubling for court users without lawyers who have no choice but to engage with the systems provided to them. And I want to unpack that for a moment because there are important duties and responsibilities attendant with any relationship, but especially between a court and its user. Court users generally don't choose their court. They have to use it. And courts generally don't choose their users. They have to take who comes. But that means that as a court procures and deploys technologies like AI, they have a very important responsibility and duty to those users to safeguard them because those users have no choice but to use that technology. And we know that many AI models rely on providers with terms of service and data sharing practices that can be incompatible with the required privacy protection in legal matters. And we've got to be vigilant in the procurement process and mindful of terms of service and data sharing structures so that we can protect the information used and potentially shared with AI models. And particularly, again, for those most vulnerable users who did not review or agree to any terms of service, who did not get consulted in procuring that technology, and who, because of their need to use the court, must nonetheless use those tech tools the court offers or sometimes even requires. And unlike expert staff, people without lawyers can't always discern whether those AI-generated information is accurate or complete or relevant. So if AI tools aren't carefully evaluated for reliability and transparency and fairness, and not paired with strong human oversight, we do risk eroding public trust as courts. Not to mention the potential harm that can be done to a court user or the public if the court gives them an AI tool and tells them to use it, and then that tool leads them down an incorrect path. Third, compounding all these other concerns is the fact that we are in a very loud hype cycle right now, and that makes all this harder to manage. There are actors, both scrupulous and otherwise, who are inundating the public and the courts with possible features or abilities to come or expansive claims about what these tools might do. And so for courts and legal aids and lawyers and anyone, the job now is not to accept these claims at face value, but instead look for or conduct independent testing and evaluation to ensure accuracy and reliability and utility. Just because a tool can do something doesn't mean it's actually helpful. Remember that AI chatbot we talked about that you were pitched recently? How do you know it actually achieves its stated goals? If people use it, are they actually more successful in finding the information they need to act on? Are they more likely to act? Do they get better outcomes? And compared to what? There's some risks here. So what are we getting for those? The hype will settle down as we get into the reality of how these tools work and more and more people get comfortable with them and these claims are interrogated. But for now, it's important for us to make sure that people are clear-eyed about the use of AI and treat any claims about what it might be able to do with some healthy skepticism. Fourth is don't forget about your values, the values of your court, the values of your firm, the values of your customers. We have to be mindful of some of the less direct but no less important concerns of AI. Aubrey started to touch on some of this. There's the digital divide and access concerns, and data privacy and sustainability. Not all users have access to reliable internet or the digital literacy necessary to engage meaningfully with these tools. So reliance on AI or any other technology contributes to that risk of furthering the digital divide in access to justice and furthering existing disparities. So if these tools are an option that you decide to use, they cannot be the only one. Speaking of values, I'm not going to opine on the merits of the very, very large number of pending lawsuits regarding intellectual property rights and copyright and whatever else, but I'll remind you that relationships with vendors are just that, relationships. So I would consider carefully how they got their training data, whether you can trust them with your data or trust their claims or trust them to remain in business. In fact, the US Copyright Office recently released a report on AI and training data, and I'm going to quote from page 107, which says, in part, making commercial use of vast troves of copyrighted works to produce expressive content that competes with them in existing markets, especially where this is accomplished through illegal access, goes beyond established fair use boundaries. I'm not saying I agree or disagree. I'm not saying that we're opining on the merits of any of this. I'm just saying that these are risk factors you need to consider, and you need to think about your potential liability tolerances, your risk tolerances, as you consider these vendors and these tools. And my fifth point here is that while these tools may appear inexpensive today, we don't actually know what their long-term costs are going to look like. If courts or others go increasingly reliant on these through third-party providers, there's a real risk that future pricing models could become prohibitive. And we've got to consider whether we can sustain the same level of service and accessibility and accuracy if the use of these tools becomes financially unsustainable. In short, a lot of money has been invested into this space, and those investors and companies are going to demand a return. So I wouldn't say that the prices today are necessarily the prices tomorrow. So I'll sum up with my curmudgeon rant by just saying that AI is a technology just like any other. So please just treat it like one. Start with a problem you're trying to solve, work backwards from there to find the right tech. And in doing so, don't accept claims at face value, interrogate them. Ask questions like, what if this tool actually doesn't get better? What proof do you have? What independent proof do you have for that claim that it can do this thing? How does this tool compare to any other in terms of quality and reliability of output and potential harms and costs and sustainability? And what are our values that we got to uphold when we're procuring and deploying tech tools? Our message here is not driven by fear or dislike of AI. Aubrey mentioned some use cases we're excited about. We're experimenting with these tools ourselves. But I do think that in this moment, when the hype cycle is so loud, these cautions are warranted. It's a rejoinder to that hype cycle. And we hope this helps because courts and others need to make informed decisions about these tools, which consider both the pros and cons and help us all avoid unnecessary harms.
All right, so after some important cautions, I guess then the question is, where might you focus your attention and apply those cautions? I think similar to a lot of what Jack has said, that when we're exploring AI to expand access to justice, it is particularly important to consider also who we are experimenting on. For people without legal representation, the consequences of flawed or underdeveloped AI tools can be profound. It's their home, it's their family. These are for most people, the worst day of their life is spent in a courtroom, and we want to make sure that we're being conscious with the tools that we create. And so for that reason, we believe that the safest and most impactful place to begin is implementing AI with internal court operations or staff-facing tools. Internal environments then allow the expert users to remain in the loop and evaluate the AI output with their subject matter expertise, minimizing the risks of harm to the public. AI can support those administrative workflows, assist in redoing a form, so reformatting using plain language, drafting a new legal information guide to help self-represented litigants, or generate custom information for individuals that they're not able to reach during business hours. When paired with the appropriate human insight, those low risk, quote unquote, low risk applications can create a significant efficiency for the court and preserve the accuracy and trust in the system, which is and needs to be maintained when creating a tool that's an extension of the court. The same is then true for experimenting with other software development. So it can also help you if you want to create a tool, there's not a vendor out there for something and you want to do something yourself, can maybe help you prototype or develop that faster, but you still need those humans in the loop that take the lead on the refinement on what it does, how it works, and what it says. You can't just let the AI run wild. And finally, then, in our last list of promising potentials, the use of AI for content management. As courts create more and host more information, both in person and online, managing the content becomes more important and then more complex. AI can be a valuable tool to help find and identify the places that you need to maintain the information, how it is or is not consistent, and make sure that your information is navigable and reliable. I think we've gone a little bit over time, but I'm just going to run through our list of if you remember nothing else, these are our top lines. Start with the problem you're trying to solve. Start with the problem that you're trying to solve. Let that guide you. Treat AI as a tool of one among many. Everything else still exists, and AI is not always going to be your best option. Think carefully about who you're experimenting on, and the place that you start typically is you're not going to choose the most vulnerable, and stay grounded in those values. Privacy, equity, transparency, and sustainability should all remain central in the decisions you make. When paired with thoughtful design, human oversight, commitment to justice, AI can hold real potential. We just encourage you to proceed in a spirit of cautious curiosity. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much, Aubrey and Zach. Really appreciate it. You answered some questions in the Q&A already. We're going to save some of the questions for the end. And I think we'll just go right on to our next panelist, Jeff.
Well, thank you, Rez. First, I do want to note that my views here are my own and not those of Bay Area Legal Services or VLEX. Thank you for the opportunity to contribute to this important dialogue on artificial intelligence and access to justice. I come to this conversation drawing on my unique professional journey that spans legal practice, legal operations, legal technology, and access to justice leadership. As the current chairperson of the board of directors of Bay Area Legal Services and director of global content marketing at VLEX, I bring perspectives shaped by direct experience with both legal technology innovation and the practical challenges of delivering legal services to vulnerable populations. My professional background, which includes roles at Ulrich, Harrington, and Sutcliffe as Senior Manager of Content Strategy, at Unicord as the Director of Content and Data Acquisition, and at Citigroup as Assistant Vice President of Legal Operations, has given me firsthand insight into how technology can transform both the business and the practice of law. Throughout these roles, I've consistently worked at the intersection of legal data, technology adoption, and service delivery, with a particular focus on leveraging innovation to improve efficiency and access. At Bay Area Legal Services, where I've served on the boards since February 2020 in various capacities, including as chair of the Veterans Committee and chair of the Audit and Finance Committee, I've witnessed the enormous challenge legal aid organizations face in meeting overwhelming client needs. It is this combination of technology expertise and legal aid leadership that informs my perspectives on how AI might help bridge the justice gap, where, as the Legal Services Corporation has documented, low-income Americans do not get any or enough legal help for 92% of their substantial civil legal problems. So for the first question, what are you excited about regarding AI and access to justice? I'm most excited about the opportunity to scale solutions to address the widening access to justice gap. For decades, the legal aid community has struggled with insufficient resources to meet overwhelming needs. Generative AI offers a genuine opportunity to serve more people faster and in more personalized, meaningful ways. The practical AI-driven solutions already available can enhance productivity and quality across nearly every aspect of legal services delivery. Tasks that once took hours can now be completed in minutes. Analyzing contracts, reviewing complaints, examining pleadings, studying depositions, assessing arguments for strengths and weaknesses, and enhancing client communications. This isn't just about efficiency, it's about fundamentally expanding the capacity of legal aid organizations to serve more clients with limited resources. I'm particularly excited about the potential to provide consumers with better user experiences tailored to their specific needs at the moment they need help. AI has tremendous potential for offering personalization at a level we haven't yet experienced in legal aid. At the end of the day, it's about the client. How can we make their experience better? AI allows us to use data and clients' lived experiences to serve them more effectively, making them feel that their story matters. The ability to rapidly combine facts of their cases with the legal arguments needed is truly transformative. What's particularly encouraging is that we're finally moving past many of the concerns that have historically held lawyers back from adopting AI, like many other technologies like the internet. The legal profession has understandably been cautious about embracing these new technologies, with questions about reliability and confidentiality at the forefront. At VLEX, we've systematically addressed these concerns through thoughtful design and implementation. For instance, we've tackled the hallucination problem through an approach that grounds all AI responses in authoritative legal sources, hyperlinked to the actual primary law that attorneys can verify. Similarly, we've resolved client confidentiality issues through zero data retention agreements with large language model providers, ensuring that sensitive information isn't stored or used for model training. As these technological and ethical hurdles continue to fall, we're approaching an inflection point in the profession. Soon, the ethical question may no longer be whether to use AI, but whether it's ethical not to use it when it can dramatically improve client service and expand access to justice for those who need it most. To the second question of what are you worried about regarding AI and access to justice, my primary concern is that we may not be meeting the moment. There's a risk we'll miss this opportunity to reimagine what's possible in legal service delivery. While legal technology over the last decade has certainly improved how we interact with clients, many advances have been incremental. Automation at the edges rather than fundamental transformation. We must think bigger. I worry about legal aid organizations having limited access to the powerful tools being developed for commercial players. The growing availability of AI-powered legal research and drafting tools is wonderful. But if these tools remain out of reach for legal aid organizations due to cost barriers, we risk widening rather than narrowing the justice gap. This raises serious questions about funding. Do legal aid organizations have adequate resources to implement and maintain these systems? Without deliberate efforts to ensure equitable access to AI technologies, we might inadvertently create a two-tiered justice system. One of my deepest concerns is that many legal aid organizations lack comprehensive generative AI policies to guide responsible implementation and use. As these organizations begin exploring AI solutions, they need clear frameworks addressing data privacy, confidentiality, security, and ethical considerations. The protection of client data must be paramount in these policies. I'm particularly concerned about ensuring that client information isn't being used to train generative AI models. This is a significant issue that should be in front of mind for all legal aid organizations, especially those that might be tempted to use readily available consumer AI tools without adequate safeguards. One essential element of any responsible generative AI policy should be establishing zero data retention agreements with AI providers. At VLEX, we've implemented such agreements with large language model providers, ensuring that when a client uploads confidential documents or submits sensitive queries, the data isn't stored by us nor by the LLM provider. This means that the data won't be used to train future models, preserving client confidentiality. Without such agreements and clear policies, legal aid organizations risk compromising client confidentiality and potentially violating ethical obligations. I fear that many organizations may not yet appreciate the sophistication required here. They might start using AI tools without understanding these crucial confidentiality implications. Legal aid organizations need to develop policies that address not just what AI can be used for, but how it should be used responsibly with appropriate safeguards. I'm also concerned that we're getting bogged down in traditional questions concerning unauthorized practice of law, even as millions of people are already using Google daily to answer legal questions without lawyers ever being involved. We need to recognize this reality and develop responsible AI solutions that can provide basic legal information, for the many people who never have access to a lawyer. For the third question of what should we be using AI to do that we might not be doing in your view? First and foremost, we should be using AI to help streamline client intake, whether it's an AI system assisting call center staff in real time, an AI agent interacting with clients to ask initial questions, or AI analyzing calls to determine legal issues and eligibility. This represents a massive opportunity. Intake is one of the biggest challenges for legal aid organizations, handling tens of thousands of calls annually. How do you triage effectively? How do you assist everyone, even those whose cases you can't take on? AI can help find more bandwidth for our teams by managing aspects of the intake process and helping attorneys quickly understand client issues. We should also be leveraging AI to better utilize the treasure trove of documents, content, and templates that legal aid organizations have built up over time. Many organizations are sitting on massive gold mines of data that can be used to develop templates, train specialized models, or extract institutional knowledge for future use. Drawing from my experience developing data governance frameworks at Unicor and implementing content strategies at org, I've seen firsthand how effective data management can transform an organization's capabilities. For legal aid organizations, the first step is conducting a comprehensive data inventory to understanding what information assets exist and how they're currently structured. This includes identifying all document repositories, case management systems, intake forms, and knowledge bases that might contain valuable data. The challenge of data governance, structuring, tagging, and preparing this information is significant, but AI can help with these tasks. Modern AI tools can assist with document classification, metadata extraction, and even identifying patterns across document collections that humans might miss. This creates a virtuous cycle where initial AI implementation helps organize data, which in turn makes future AI applications even more effective. Organizations should establish clear taxonomies and standards for document labeling, ensuring consistency across their collections. They should also develop explicit policies about data retention, privacy, and user rights. These governance frameworks aren't just technical exercises, they're essential foundations for ethical and effective AI implementation. Without them, even the most sophisticated AI tools will struggle to deliver meaningful results from disorganized data. Legal aid organizations also shouldn't wait too long to begin organizing and leveraging the data they already possess. The value locked in these existing assets can be substantial, potentially enabling more personalized client service, faster response times, and more comprehensive legal assistance without requiring additional human resources. And beyond direct legal practice, AI offers substantial opportunities for the business operations of legal aid organizations. Development teams can use generative AI to create more effective fundraising materials and social content to improve messaging and personalize communications for supporters. AI can analyze messy data files, create transcripts from recordings, and handle numerous non-legal tasks that nevertheless impact organizational effectiveness. AI also presents opportunities to improve lawyer satisfaction and retention in legal aid. By automating routine tasks and administrative burdens, we can create a better work-life balance and make legal aid work more sustainable and enjoyable. At a time when many legal aid organizations are struggling with recruitment and retention, this benefit should not be overlooked. In conclusion, the integration of AI into legal aid isn't just about technology. It's about reimagining how we deliver justice to those who need it most. At Bay Area Legal Services, we're committed to creating pathways to justice through legal services, education, and community partnerships. Through our Pathways to Justice campaign, we're working to cultivate a culture that embraces innovation while honoring the traditional values of legal services. AI represents a powerful new tool in this mission. As we navigate this rapidly evolving landscape, we must balance excitement about AI's transformative potential with thoughtful consideration of the ethical, practical, and access challenges it presents. Legal aid organizations, bar associations, courts, technology providers, and funders must collaborate to ensure that AI serves as a force for narrowing rather than widening the justice gap. Throughout my career, from my early days at Citigroup developing legal operations solutions to my work at Unicourt, leveraging court data for improved access to legal information, to my current role at VLEX educating legal professionals about best practices for using AI-powered platforms, and my service at Bay Area Legal Services supporting vulnerable populations, I've seen how technology can either reinforce existing inequities or help dismantle them. The difference lies in intentional design, thoughtful implementation, and a real commitment to equity. I believe we stand at a pivotal moment for access to justice. If we approach AI with intention, creativity, and a commitment to equity, we have the opportunity to dramatically expand our ability to serve vulnerable populations and move closer to fulfilling the promise of equal justice for all. The question isn't whether AI will transform legal aid. It's how will we shape that transformation to best serve those in need. Thank you for the opportunity to contribute to this important conversation. Thanks, Raz.
Thanks so much, Jeff. No, that was great. I really appreciate it. And your suggestion that we need to think big. I think it's something we really need to think about. As as an industry, as a legal services industry, thinking big and meeting the moment and embracing the technology that we have. There's a few more minutes until the next panel. There's a couple of questions that came in. Do you have any concerns regarding, I think some of these may have come through in the testimony, but for the panel, do you have any concerns regarding open AI versus closed AI programs?
I'm happy to jump in, Rez, on that one as the resident legal technology provider here. I think the answer is yes. Using systems that are grounded in the law is incredibly important. You know, VLEX and our Vincent AI solution is not the only one. There are several providers who ground their actual responses in the law, and I think that's a really critical distinction here. If you're using it for actual legal practice to support lawyers and legal professionals, it's crucial that the responses that you're getting are actually grounded in the law and that you can verify them.
Thank you, Jeff. And Judge Hedges?
My concern is that if you're using a closed system, do you have adequate data fed into the system that you can get responses that, I hate to say are good, but are good? The risk is, I mentioned before, if you go to an open system, you run the risk of compromising confidential information and getting into questions about attorney-client privilege and work product.
Great, thank you. Another question just came in. Generative AI completion forms, pleadings, and petitions provided by a private sector provider is considered unauthorized practice of law. What strides are being made to narrow the definition of UPL to exclude generative AI that is programmed and vetted by lawyers? Is anyone familiar with any efforts? And this could go to the panel that hasn't spoken yet too. And Zach, I know you're gonna have to go soon, but if you need to, if you're aware.
I am. Yeah, I'll just chime in briefly, and then I apologize, but I do have to run. But the National Center has partnered with the Thomson Reuters Institute, and we're doing a whole host of different working groups discussing different elements of AI in the courts. And one of them is looking particularly at that issue of the unauthorized practice of law. And they're working, and we're close to soon releasing a white paper with some guidance for courts and some ideas and things to think about there. I don't want to get in front of that, but that is at least one example I know of where we're actively looking at that and talking about it. And I believe some state courts are doing that as well in their broader efforts to think about the UPL rules as they currently exist.
Great. Well, thank you. I mean, I think we've got 1 minute left before, so I think at the end of this, we'll just I thank everyone. Thank you, Jeff. Thank you, Judge Hedges. Thank you, Scott, Zach, and Aubrey for your great testimony and your answers and engagement on this issue. You know, it's going to be really valuable. Like we talked about, I think we talked about it before it started, but so everyone that's attending this hearing knows is that the testimony that's being provided here is going to be used towards a report that the President's Committee on Access to Justice is generating and creating about AI and access to justice in 2025. So thank you for your contributions to that effort. Thank you very much.
Great. Good to be here. Thanks, all.
Thank you.
All right. So I think we can go right into the next panel. I know, thank you for, I mean, viewers, if you need to take a bio break, feel free. But I think thanks, Judge. But I think it's best if we just continue given that we came up right against the clock that time. So our next panel includes, let me just get to it, sorry. We have our next 5 speakers are it's Sam. Let me see. I just want to make sure I'm doing it in order. Satish Nori, Randall Jeffrey, Lisa Colpois, Alexander Horowitz, and Sam Harding. So Satish. So there is Satish. Satish is a senior legal innovation strategist at Just Tech. He's a law professor and an author with 2 decades of experience representing tenants in New York City. He's a recognized leader in legal innovation and access to justice, and recently delivered TED Talks. Really, a TED Talk on AI and homelessness. That's great.
I'm glad you watched it.
Yeah, well, I will now. And then we have Randall Jeffries, who is general counsel at NILAG, where he advises on legal ethics, governance, and AI integration. With over 25 years at NILAG, he also leads the organization's generative AI working group. And we also have Lisa Colpoys, who is a senior consultant for the Lawyers Trust Funds of Illinois' AI initiative with a career dedicated to legal innovation. She has led transformative projects like Illinois Legal Aid Online and Stanford's Filing Fairness Project. We also have Sam Hardin, who is a lawyer and technologist passionate about bridging the access to justice gap through innovation. He has led tech-driven legal initiatives in Florida and frequently speaks on law and technology. And we also have Alexander Horowitz, who is the Chief Operating Officer at Legal Services NYC. I would have more to say. So I've been trying to use AI to help generate everything I'm using for this thing, just to embrace AI. So Alex, thank you, and thanks everyone for joining. So first we have Satish. Satish, why don't you go ahead?
Thanks, Rose. I'm going to be formal and deliver some testimony. Shouldn't be more than 10 or 12 minutes. Thank you for the opportunity to testify before you today on one of the most pressing and promising developments in our profession, the intersection of artificial intelligence and access to justice. I come to this discussion not as a technologist, but as a tenant attorney who has spent decades in housing courts in New York City, as a legal educator at NYU Law, and as someone who has seen the devastating gap between what our legal system promises and what it delivers, especially for the most vulnerable. I now have the privilege of working with Just Tech to develop AI tools designed to serve low-income individuals. So my position is grounded in both the courtroom and the lab, in both reality and technological possibility. In fact, my upcoming book, The Augmented Lawyer, AI and the Future of the Legal Profession, addresses many of these issues. Today, I want to address 5 key areas. 1, AI as a force multiplier. 2, the affordability and accessibility of AI tools. 3, the urgent need to teach AI in law schools. 4, the importance of making legal AI available directly to consumers. And 5, the need to abolish the outdated and exclusionary rules surrounding the unauthorized practice of law. Let me begin with the first. AI is a force multiplier. AI is not going to replace lawyers, but it's going to redefine what lawyers do and how much they can do. In a country where 92% of civil legal needs go unmet each year, the legal profession does not face an employment crisis, it faces a capacity crisis. Right now, we are totally and utterly failing to deliver legal services to most people in this country, and the gap is growing. AI is uniquely capable of amplifying our efforts. It can draft pleadings, summarize case law, triage intake, even explain legal processes in plain English. For overburdened legal aid organizations, this is not a threat, it's a lifeline. AI can handle the repetitive and standardized tasks that now consume attorneys' time, freeing us to focus on the parts of practice that require judgment, empathy, and advocacy. We've seen this firsthand. Tools like Roxanne the Repair Bot, which I developed with the folks at Joseph Legal, have helped tenants understand their rights and communicate with landlords in more informed, strategic ways, without needing to wait weeks for lawyers to call them back. These systems are not theoretical, they work. AI allows one lawyer to do the work of 5. But more importantly, it allows non-lawyers to participate in the legal system with a level of confidence and clarity that was previously unavailable. 2, AI is accessible and therefore transformative. One of the myths that we must dispel is that AI is only for elite law firms or Silicon Valley-backed startups. The truth is that large language models, when responsibly implemented, are becoming increasingly affordable and open source. A nonprofit legal aid group today can integrate an AI tool for document review, client correspondence, internal research at a fraction of the cost of hiring additional attorneys or paralegals. The marginal cost of serving an additional client is approaching 0. This is not just about efficiency, it's about equity. Access to high-quality legal guidance should not depend on whether a person can pay $400 an hour. With AI, we can flatten the resource hierarchy that has long defined the legal system. We can offer the same quality of legal reasoning drawn from the same databases and precedent to someone in Elmira as to someone on the Upper East Side. For legal services providers, AI levels the playing field. 3, AI must be taught in law schools. If we are serious about preparing the next generation of lawyers, then AI literacy must become a core part of legal education. Right now, most law students graduate without even a passing familiarity with the tools that are already reshaping legal practice. This is unacceptable. Law schools must treat AI as they once treated legal writing or research, as fundamental. This means going beyond one-off electives. It means integrating AI into doctrinal courses, clinical programs, bar prep. Students should graduate not only knowing how to use AI, but how to critique it, how to regulate it, how to improve it. At NYU, I've seen the hunger among students to engage with this topic. They understand that the profession they are entering will not look like the one that existed 10 or even 5 years ago. They want to be prepared. It's our responsibility to give them the tools to not just be competent, but visionary. If we don't do this, we are failing our students and by extension, the clients they will serve. 4, AI must be available directly to consumers. Here is a hard truth. Most Americans will never have access to a lawyer. Not for housing, not for debt, not for immigration. If we gatekeep AI tools behind law firm walls or bar association logins, we are simply entrenching the existing injustice. AI can and should be made directly available to the public with clear disclaimers, built-in ethical safeguards, and up-to-date legal data. We can empower people to solve their own problems. This is not unauthorized practice, it's survival. There are already examples, Upsolve's bankruptcy tool, Roxanne, and others. People are using these tools because there is no alternative. We should not be asking how to protect lawyers from AI. We should be asking how to protect the public from a legal system that still assumes a lawyer is the only pathway to justice. Part 5. The unauthorized practice of law must be reimagined or abolished. Let me close with what may be the most controversial point here. It is time to abolish or fundamentally reform UPL laws as they currently exist. These rules were built to protect consumers from fraud, but too often they're used to protect lawyers from competition. They prevent community advocates, technologists, even nonprofit organizations from providing legal information unless a licensed attorney is involved. This is not protection, this is exclusion. In New York, Upsolve was sued for UPL violations for helping low-income New Yorkers file for bankruptcy. That case is still pending. But the deeper issue is this. We can't solve the justice gap by clinging to 20th century guild rules. We need a new framework, one that is risk-based, evidence-informed, focused on outcomes. The question should not be, did a lawyer draft this? But rather, did this help someone solve a legal problem fairly and accurately? If AI can do that, and increasingly it can, we should celebrate it, not regulate it. In conclusion, AI is not a panacea. It's not without risk, but neither is it a threat to be feared or stifled. It's a tool, a powerful one, that can bring us closer to the ideal of justice under law. We are in a crisis, one that is growing. We cannot hedge on potential solutions. The question is whether we have the courage to let go of our old assumptions. Can we, as lawyers, accept something that is less than perfect? People don't want lawyers. They want solutions to their life problems. Are we ready to imagine a legal system that is more democratic, more accessible, and more humane? I hope so. Thank you.
Thank you, Satish. And as I said at the beginning, I provided 3 prompts, or do what you want. It seems like Satish did what he wanted, which is good. I love it. There's a question from someone that says to Satish, doesn't your second point that AI tools are less costly than hiring staff undermine your first point that AI tools are not a threat to the profession, especially to legal aid orgs that are facing severe funding cuts?
That's a great question. And I think the fundamental issue is, what is the purpose of legal services? Is it to exist, or is it to help people who don't have any other way to solve their legal problems? And if it's simply to exist, then I have no answer for you. But if it is to think about ways to solve legal problems, then we have to evolve. We have to think of new ways to address the crisis that we're facing. And one of those ways is to maybe think of staffing in different ways, to seek funding that supports new projects and initiatives that can help us scale, and to kind of measure that success in helping more people. And so there is, if you look at it narrowly, a contradiction, which is, well, if you're going to build more tools, that means less people and less funding. But I think it's on us to be more creative about how we explain that we're going to use these tools to bridge the gap. Remember that the gap is wide, and we are nowhere close to having enough resources to address that gap. And so it's on us to tell that story and say, no, it's not about AI with less money. It's about all of everything, and let us use AI to maximize our output.
Thank you, Satish. I think there's some other questions that are coming through, but I think we can save. Let's try to save some more questions for the end, and let's get to the next speaker. Next up, we have Randall Jeffrey from NILAG. Randall.
Good afternoon, and thank you for the opportunity to present at today's hearing. I'm Randall Jeffrey, General Counsel at the New York Legal Assistance Group, or NILAG. NILAG provides comprehensive civil legal services to New Yorkers in need, impacting nearly 130,000 lives in 2024 alone. I will summarize my written testimony at this hearing and note that the testimony reflects my personal views and not necessarily the views of NILAG. Today's topic is the transformative impact that artificial intelligence may have on the ability of those who cannot afford an attorney to access justice in New York and across the country. My focus is specifically on the use of generative AI, or Gen AI, to increase access to justice in New York. To put it simply, from what I understand about Gen AI and have seen in practice, it is hard to overestimate the impact that Gen AI will have on access to justice generally and on the delivery of civil legal services specifically. Gen AI has rapidly evolved since ChatGPT's release in late 2022. Already, Gen AI is being used internally for things such as legal drafting and research, and also externally for items such as client interactions and explanations of legal concepts. There are a myriad of tasks that lawyers and legal services offices can potentially delegate to Gen AI applications. I note that my testimony mentions a number of potential applications without stating whether legal services should use specific ones. The question in terms of what applications should be adopted by legal services needs to be answered by the legal services community as a whole. In answering these questions, it will be necessary to keep our clients front and center, both those who we represent and those who we turn away for lack of resources. It's incumbent upon the legal services community to discuss with intentionality the proper role of Gen AI as a tool in its client-centered practice. I understand that there are real and substantial ethical and privacy concerns regarding the use of Gen AI, but these are manageable from my perspective. The rules of professional conduct provide a framework for the use of Gen AI, including the rules regarding competence and communication. As to privacy concerns, they have been raised and addressed as technology has advanced through the digital age, including with such developments as email, cloud storage, and remote access. To me, the fundamental question is what aspects of legal practice are we willing as a legal services community to delegate to Gen AI applications? Gen AI has many transformative uses, and each one of these must be judged on its own merits. Which use cases are appropriate will certainly change over time as Gen AI becomes more powerful and as people in general become more comfortable interacting with Gen AI applications. How can Gen AI be potentially used? There are a whole host of potential use cases in legal services. How well will Gen AI be able to provide legal information? To minimize hallucinations and incorrect information, chatbots can rely on retrieval augmented generation, or RAG, to provide information based on a legal service provider's own pre-existing legal resources. But any such chatbots must be fine-tuned and vetted. How well will Gen AI be able to communicate with clients, either in writing or verbally? Already, one study has concluded that Gen AI can provide better quality written information than doctors and with more empathy. And the Arizona Supreme Court has created 2 avatars, Daniel and Victoria, to deliver summaries of court decisions to the general public in a timely and effective manner. Will Gen AI be able to effectively conduct intake, including collecting eligibility and case details? Legal service organizations commit a substantial amount of resources to intake, gathering demographic and other information required by funders, screening for eligibility for services, and obtaining information about the basic facts of the matter. Will Gen AI be able to effectively create legal documents? As an example, Missouri's eviction defense document engine already creates court forms for self-represented tenants in the state. And finally, could Gen AI someday represent clients in court or before administrative agencies? As far-fetched as this may seem, it could become a reality in the future. It has been reported that a litigant already tried to use an avatar before the first department in New York, and the founder of Zoom envisions a future in which a Gen AI avatar can substitute in for him at certain meetings. I can assure you today that this is me and not an avatar presenting. In thinking about these issues, I put these use cases into 3 broad buckets. One is Gen AI as an internal assistant. This is the least controversial use case for Gen AI, where it acts as a support tool for staff, increasing efficiency while preserving the traditional client-lawyer relationship. For example, conducting research, making first drafts of memos or correspondence to clients, where the lawyer or the legal services staff person retains the ultimate responsibility and review for the final product. External assistant as the next bucket, where generative AI interacts directly with third parties such as clients. These include use cases such as handling intake, explaining the status of cases to clients, or communicating decisions, and this could be done either in writing or via avatars or otherwise verbally. Delegating some of these external tasks to Gen AI could allow legal services staff to focus on more fundamental aspects of lawyering, such as providing legal advice, recommending a course of action, explaining the consequences of various options, making strategic decisions, and litigating cases before tribunals. Finally, there's the bucket of Gen AI as a freestanding agent, which is the most controversial set of use cases, where Gen AI does its work without the direct supervision or assistance of a lawyer or a legal services office. As mentioned, this use case immediately runs into unauthorized practice of law concerns. One component of this use case, though, is delivering legal information, which can be done without the direct interaction or supervision of an attorney or a legal service office, again, using RAG or retrieval augmented generation through a legal service office's own documents that have been vetted and that are already available to clients online or otherwise. A question had arisen earlier about unauthorized practice of law. I note that Minnesota has proposed a generative AI sandbox, allowing for certain use cases that would otherwise constitute unauthorized practice of law to be implemented in practice. This is going forward and happening in other states. It may well happen in New York as well. Under this, generative AI could draft documents, send letters, even make decisions on a case. Everything for a, in quote, client, except actual in court or administrative agency representation. As I mentioned at the beginning of my testimony, I asked a lot of questions that I didn't necessarily answer in terms of the use of generative AI. One answer, though, that I am certain of is that if the legal services community fails to use Gen AI to fill the justice gap, others will. Even now, I can ask ChatGPT or really any other Gen AI program to produce any sort of legal document for me, and it will do so willingly. I can get what I would consider to be legal advice from Google. I know at the bottom of it, there's a little disclaimer that says, for legal advice, actual legal advice, consult a professional. But for somebody who doesn't have the money to afford an attorney and is unable to access free legal services due to lack of resources, that response right now from Google or another Gen AI may be the only response that they have to go on. It is within this context that legal service providers as a community need to confront these questions in an intentional manner so as to provide answers that ultimately benefit the clients that we all serve. Thank you.
Thanks, Randall. Really appreciate it. I'm just wondering, you mentioned that even in limited use cases, Gen AI can be profound. Can you share an example of that?
Certainly, it can help with drafting documents, analyzing information, reviewing the case information that's already available within legal service providers, to spot issues, for example, or give recommendations as to next steps in a case. There's a huge amount, as been mentioned by the previous panel, of data that's available that legal service providers have already. And an appropriate Gen AI program being able to access that data can certainly be of a huge help as an assistant in-house to lawyers and other legal service professionals.
Great. Thank you, Randall. Next, we have Lisa Colpoys. Lisa, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me. I'm delighted to be here. And while I am in Chicago, I was born and grew up in New York, so you all are very close to my heart. So I'm going to talk today about some of the work that I'm doing and some of the thoughts that I'm having. So again, my name is Lisa Colpoys. I currently serve as senior consultant for the AI initiative for the Lawyers Trust Fund of Illinois, which is the IOLTA program in Illinois. And as such, the Lawyers Trust Fund supports 55 civil legal aid programs throughout the state with critical funding that ensures that they can carry out their missions to deliver legal services to a wide variety of vulnerable communities and individuals. The AI initiative was launched last September to support Lawyers Trust Fund grantees as they learn about and begin to deploy artificial intelligence technology and tools in their organizations and legal practices. To be clear, the intent of this initiative is not to replace legal aid professionals with technology, but instead it is to support and supplement their work so they are better equipped to serve their clients and communities. And I hope that this can be a model for other state justice communities as well. Generative AI holds transformative potential to enhance access to justice, particularly for underserved populations. And while I recognize the groundbreaking work that's occurring across the country to develop AI tools to support self-represented litigants, the focus of what I want to talk about is on the use of AI to support legal aid professionals, especially those who represent and help people in need of legal services. I will briefly discuss first why legal aid lawyers and advocates should embrace the use of AI, and second, how we can encourage and support the use of AI by legal aid lawyers and legal aid programs. So first is really the case for AI in legal aid. And that really goes back to the justice gap, which is the difference between the availability of and the need for legal services. In the United States, this has been documented and has increased over the last 40 years. The Legal Services Corporation's most recent Justice Gap study in 2022 found that low-income Americans did not receive any or enough legal help for 92% of their civil legal problems. Many people never seek legal assistance for a variety of reasons, but for those who do try to get help, legal aid organizations turn away half of them because they don't have sufficient capacity to help. And these facts play out similarly across the country in every state. At the same time, the recent rise of generative AI over the past 2.5 years is beginning to reshape the practice of law at all levels. And we've heard that from several of the folks who have already spoken today. While legal aid lawyers have not fully embraced the use of AI in their practices, many are beginning to see how it can be useful. In October 2024, the Lawyers Trust Fund conducted a statewide survey of legal aid professionals in Illinois to learn about their perspectives on and use of AI. Not surprisingly, 90% of respondents said they were not using AI at all or using it only slightly in their work. However, half of all respondents said They're moderately or more motivated to use AI in their work, and nearly 2/3 think their organization is open to their use of AI. These results are encouraging to me because they indicate an openness and perhaps even a desire by legal aid professionals to use AI in their work. I think wholeheartedly that legal aid professionals should embrace AI for many reasons, and not only because it offers to increase efficiency and allow them to serve more people. Although those are key reasons for organizations that collectively meet less than 10% of the needs for their services. When deployed responsibly, AI can help legal aid reach communities traditionally left out of the legal system, reduce administrative burdens that drain its capacity, and hopefully give overworked legal aid professionals some needed work-life balance. This last point is particularly important because it supports the mental health of legal aid lawyers who are often susceptible to burnout. The time for legal aid professionals to start using AI is now. If legal aid lawyers and professionals do not understand how AI can be used to support their work, and they are not at the table to shape how AI will be used, they risk having it deployed in ways that will widen the justice gap, not decrease it. So, how can we encourage and support the use of AI by legal professionals? To start with, legal aid lawyers are overwhelmed by the volume of people who need their help. And frankly, these days they have more important issues to address than figuring out how to use AI, such as how to keep the organizations funded and how to support vulnerable clients. Of course, AI can help them address these issues, but legal aid professionals first need the encouragement and support to understand the potential of AI and how it can be used in their practices. They also need time and space to experiment, to learn how to use AI technology, and to integrate AI tools into their daily work. In Illinois, the Lawyers Trust Fund has invested in providing this encouragement and support to all the legal aid programs it funds through its AI initiative. By starting with a survey of legal aid professionals, we sought to understand what their thoughts are about the use of AI and where they are in their journey. Based on the survey results, we've designed several support mechanisms and programs to encourage and support the use of AI, including the following. First, an Intro to AI webinar series, I think similar to the AI University in New York, which gives legal aid professionals basic knowledge about what AI is, how to communicate effectively using AI, how to create an AI use policy, and the ethics of AI in a legal aid practice. Those webinars were presented at the beginning of 2025 and have been recorded and are available for people to access on demand. We've also developed a statewide moderated discussion group on the use of AI in legal aid, which currently has about 200 legal aid professionals participating. This is a space where people can share information and learn about the use of AI. Another support mechanism that we've put in place is weekly office hours that legal aid professionals can drop in to ask questions and share their work. Some weeks we spotlight experts who will discuss a particular AI-related topic, or will share a tool that is particularly useful in their practice. And then lastly, at least for now, we're developing peer learning groups. These are groups, cohorts of 6 to 10 people from different organizations that are getting together to evaluate specific use cases for AI and to test AI tools and develop best practices. We're starting on the business side with a cohort of grant writing professionals, and we'll soon be assembling a group of public benefit lawyers to assess how AI can be used in their practices. We are hopeful that through this work, through the encouragement and the support that's being provided to use AI, that legal professionals will in fact embrace the time. One of my concerns is that lawyers in general, and especially legal aid lawyers, will miss the AI bus. And I hope that by providing this type of support that we can avoid that. In conclusion, I think that by learning to harness AI responsibly, the legal aid community can help ensure that the future of justice is more accessible, not less. Thank you.
No, thank you, Lisa. Really appreciate it. That's that was great. There's a question in the Q&A, and then I also had one question. So first, let's do the Q&A question. How do we put in guardrails to make sure that the institutional attorneys will not be told you can do more with less attorneys because they are using AI to increase efficiencies?
Yeah, that is a very real challenge. And in fact, I think last week there was an article about a similar topic that Jordan Furlong posted. And it was about how we need to make sure that the use of AI does not increase the stress and challenges that lawyers face, and instead that we're using AI to support lawyers so that they can be more effective and do their jobs better, perhaps work at the top of their license and serve their clients better. I don't think the goal is to necessarily do more with less, although AI does provide that opportunity. The goal is to have a richer experience and provide better services for our clients. I'm not sure that I explained that as eloquently as I wanted to, but hopefully you got the idea.
Thank you, Lisa, definitely. Satish?
Yeah, this is what economists call Jevons paradox. It applies when, for example, you put more lanes on a highway and it just results in more traffic. And so that's the trap that we have to try to avoid, where we build tools that are more efficient, which means more work and more burnout and more stress for everyone involved. One way to kind of counter that is to apply the tools in areas in which we don't already work, but yet the lack of availability of those tools impacts our work, like intake on issues that we don't address, or questions from people outside of our geographic catchment area, or similar problems. But it's certainly a trap that we face when we increase efficiency into any system.
I think, yeah, and I think we need to be very intentional about the tools that we are deploying and make it clear to staff that these tools are not being deployed to replace you, but instead to support you.
Yeah. Thank you, Lisa. Thank you, Satish. I think we'll move on from my question, just in the interest of time. Alexander?
Thank you, Rez. Thank you so much. Thank you for putting this together, and thank you to the rest of the panelists. These are some of my favorite people in legal tech, and it's a real pleasure to be on the panel with them. My name is Alexander Horwitz. I'm the Chief Operating Officer of Legal Services in New York City. And I think I probably have a slightly different perspective than a lot of my colleagues on this call, because I am neither an attorney nor am I a technologist. So what am I doing here? Well, besides Rez being generous and extending the invitation, I am responsible for all of our infrastructure. And LISNI is an organization that's been around for about 60 years. I don't have to tell the folks in this room that in nonprofit organizations, infrastructure chases program. And so infrastructure is almost always in need of updating and repair and fixing up to meet the moment for large nonprofits. Because Legal Services of New York City is the largest provider, exclusive provider of civil legal services in the country, we feel a particular responsibility to interrogate new technologies, to test them, and then to share what we've learned with the larger community of legal services providers, especially other grantees of the Legal Services Corporation, because there are so many grantees around the country who are just too small to spend a lot of time and resources investing technologies that might work or might not. And we have that kind of bandwidth. And so we feel that special responsibility, obviously with something as revolutionary as artificial intelligence, accessible and affordable artificial intelligence, and the large language models that can plug into it, we were very keen to figure out how we could use and leverage that technology to support the work of our advocates, and most importantly, to support the lives and outcomes for our clients. The challenge, of course, in approaching technology like this for us is, how do we run those experiments? Where can we integrate this technology that we know will be safe, even if we don't know a lot about the tech? And I'd like to talk a little more about the definition of safe integration a bit later. For now, where I'd like to start is where we have successfully integrated AI and large language models into our workflows to hopefully give folks an idea of where they might start as a jumping off point that really can improve efficiencies, again, to Lisa's point, without creating new burdens on folks. In fact, with an eye towards the exact opposite of reducing burdens on advocates, paraprofessionals, and other professionals in the organization, to free them up to focus on meeting our mission. And here are a few examples of that in Legal Services of NYC. We are using artificial intelligence, a large language model, a private large language model with hidden prompts and the ability to perform semantic searches to power our knowledge management system, which is a system that can rapidly share and deploy information across practice areas, across departments, across boroughs. And that was a very successful integration. What we've set up is a system that can easily digest hundreds of pages of documents, quickly summarize them, convey that summary across the organization to make that material easier to find, easier to share, and easier to use. Another place where we successfully integrated LLMs and artificial intelligence generally is in our finance department with certain AR and AP functions. That has reduced our overhead. It's reduced the number of overtime hours and late night hours that our finance department has to spend on some very, very complex accounting tasks, mostly foisted on us by our funders, I might add. Our grants and contracts department has been very successful in using large language models to very, very quickly ingest and summarize case studies to meet the reporting requirements of funders, which, as we all know, are extremely extensive and labor intensive, and to do more with not less, but to do more with what we had. Which is, I think, the mark of really great efficiency increases. Our data and evaluation department has also been using large language models and AI systems to crunch large data sets to provide not only important information for grant reporting, but also internal diagnostics about the health of the organization, and also to support affirmative litigation. Performing analysis of poverty distribution in New York City, for example, or overlaying certain legal needs with certain geographic areas, all powered by AI. And finally, in our benefits department and a few other areas, we have attorneys who are safely experimenting with AI in the discovery process, which, again, although I am not an attorney, I understand is just about the worst thing in the world. Where have we not integrated AI, and why? We have not integrated AI in anything that touches our clients directly. And that is deliberate. And I am keenly aware of the disagreement on the panel about that. And I also want to say that most of the people on the panel who are on the other side of that argument have convinced me many times over that it's something that should be explored. But I remain reluctant, and I'd like to tell you a little bit about why. And this goes back to my background specifically, not being a lawyer and not being a technologist. I've spent the last 15 years working in human services organizations of all kinds, poverty alleviation organizations, in homeless services, in prison services, and in reentry services. And I've spent a lot of time watching how these brilliant social workers, case workers, and advocates interact with their clients to serve them, and what a person's needs really look like when they are in pretty desperate need of those services. And one of the reasons that we at LISNI are very reluctant to engage in that sort of face-to-face or face to whatever AI has contact with clients is partly philosophical and also partly operational. Philosophically, it's very difficult when you don't know exactly how a piece of tech works to figure out where it goes wrong. And I'll give you a parallel to that. We have a hotline, receives about 120,000 calls a year. We can only answer 60 of them, 60,000 calls a year. Seems like the perfect place for AI to come in and give us a lift. The problem is we know already how difficult it is to quality control those phone calls. It requires reviewing recordings. It requires understanding the dynamic between intake paralegal and potential client and teasing out all of the points of nuance and empathy and care that has to be taken in those interactions. We also have the ability to go back to those clients and to correct our mistakes, to admit our mistakes proactively, and then to correct them. And as far as we've seen so far, AI has none of those abilities. I was actually going to open this testimony with a little bit of a bad joke, which is, does anyone have any books they can recommend this summer? If you don't catch that joke, it is the Chicago Sun-Times that just yesterday published a great list of books you should read over the summer, none of which exist. None of which exist because they were all manufactured by a large language model that the Chicago Sun-Times uses. Now, that's, of course, just one example. It doesn't mean anything for the technology as a whole. But with little stuff like that happening, it is correct, in my opinion, to be uneasy about a technology providing confident answers to complex questions. Even if the model is trained to answer those complex questions, all it takes is the wrong prompt, and I'm putting wrong in quotation marks because you're asking users to interact with it, and it might spit out that kind of garbage. People don't know why it's doing that, so it's very difficult to invest in that when you talk about removing the human from human services. But more important than giving wrong information, I want to provide a tiny little hypothetical for you about what happens when AI gets the information right, but still gets it wrong for a client. And this is an example that I've debated with a couple of people on this panel. And again, every single time they have convinced me I was wrong, I'm still going to give my side of it. And that is, why don't we use AI to answer people's sort of frivolous questions that just eat up a lot of attorney time? Like, for example, what time is my court date? Something AI should easily be able to handle. And it will deliver the right answer. The problem is that if you are a social worker sitting across the table from someone or on the phone with someone and they ask you that question, there are a few other things you might want to investigate. Like, for example, do you need childcare? Do you need nutrition support? Do you need medical support? Do you need transportation support? Do you need someone to look after your parent? Are you injured? Do you need a doctor? Those are all questions that a social worker will ask when someone asks a mundane question that you think they should already know, because it warrants that kind of exploration. It warrants that kinds of exploration because they understand the nuance of someone in crisis. They understand the care that has to be extended to them, and they understand that people in crisis are not always willing to volunteer their pain points. Right now, the technology isn't there. It's still making mistakes. Some of them are pretty funny. But when I think about the real danger of delivering this technology to clients at this moment, I think about the loss of nuance and the loss of care and how we might miss an opportunity to meet a client's needs. That doesn't take care of the resource problem that we've already talked about, and that so many people have pointed out that we're not even at 10% of meeting the needs of people who require legal services. I do want to, just by way of comparison, homeless services in New York City has about a 100-year head start on legal services. We have 1/3 of the beds that we need. So in human services, we are always going to be chasing need. And I would urge us all to think about the Hippocratic oath that doctors take, the reluctance that physicians have to prescribe courses of treatment when their methods of action aren't fully known. and to really weigh the difference between not being able to provide people with services and being able to provide services that may miss the mark completely. I don't know where that balance is, and I've been in this business for a really long time. I do trust the people in this room to come up with the right answer. And I think it's through conversations like this and through the exploration of these models that we'll be able to strike that balance. But I am greeting this technology with a mix of intense skepticism in its ability to care for people, but an intense belief in its ability to function in our back offices in ways that save us enormous amounts of time and money and save attorneys from having to engage in administrative work that really stops us from meeting our mission. And I don't know what the benefits will be in 10 years, but I know that today, those are benefits you can count on and where we should be investing in AI integration in law practice. That's all. Thank you.
Alexander, thank you. I really appreciate that thoughtful response to this whole question. Just in the interest of time, we're going to go to our next panelist, but Sam Harden. Right before we go to Sam, I just remembered I never thanked the other the other co-members of my subcommittee, Lillian Moy, Bill Silverman, and John Greiner. Thank you all for helping organize these trainings. This hearing. I really appreciate it. It just occurred to me, and that's what happens when you don't put in the right prompt into generate an introduction to me, right? So forgets the three people that matter. So well, not just the three, everyone else too. Thank you, Sam. Go ahead.
All right. Well, I am Sam Harden. I work at Pro Bono Net. I live in Florida, not in New York, unfortunately. So it's very hot here. I also am obligated to say these are my personal views and opinions, not those of Pro Bono Net. So hold anything I say against me, not against my employer. I want to thank everybody for, talking today. Everybody's very smart on this panel. I was sitting there thinking, what could I add to this discussion that's actually of any value? I'm not sure that I am. I have no final answer for you. I think my opinion on AI changes day to day. It flops between AI's going to usher in the next utopia versus we're all going to become fodder for the robot army. And so some days I'm in between. But what encourages me about AI and access to justice specifically is a couple of things. The first is things people have already touched on. I think that if used well, AI can increase attorneys' capacity to do their highest and best work. I think in law, and I was in private practice for years, I never practiced in legal aid. But even in private practice, I spent a lot of my time doing rote tasks just because I had to do them. I was, very, very frequently not at the top of my license, as I would consider it. So I think AI, if used well, will let attorneys in legal aid organizations and in nonprofits operate at the top of their license. And by that, I mean be able to use their human judgment, right? As Alexander was saying, human judgment is key here. And I think that's where we need attorneys to step in because their time, their expertise, that matters. So use AI to take away the rote stuff that they do. Let them use it to help them prepare for things, help them, read through voluminous medical records and disability cases, to schedule appointments, things like that. I think that is a really, really nice use of AI that can help attorneys do more stuff. I also think for self-represented users of AI that the future is really promising. Even the present is really promising. I remember back in 2023 when Google Bard first came out, I took a open data set. It was a set of public questions posted to Reddit, stripped of identifying information. It's like a common AI data set that is used to train models. And I took some of the questions from there and I fed those into different models. And when I fed them into Google Bard would respond with something very, very generic. that I would consider legal advice that was somewhat helpful, and it got the gist of what the person was trying to do, gave them some generic advice about what they should do. It often hallucinated cases to look up and use for this person, and then said, like, you should, consult an attorney. And now if I feed those same questions into Gemini, their deep research model, it actually does an entirely different process. It gives me a research plan that I can approve. It then scours the internet and pulls back resources, reads those resources, analyzes them, creates a new plan based on what it finds in those resources, and then ends up writing a multiple page output with references that I can read through, export to Google Docs, and even have it create a two-person podcast about that. What was kind of remarkable in 2023 when I was going, wow, this is really cool. I can't believe they got AI to do this, now looks like 25, 30 years ago over the space of 2 years. I think that kind of advancement is huge. Where Gemini is right now and where OpenAI's models are, where Anthropic's models are, because they're all basically equivalent in my mind, it's huge for helping people understand and analyze their legal problems. There are tools out there, not in the US, but one called Garfield AI, which I recommend everyone check out, garfield.law. It's an AI agent that someone can use to help them file small claims in UK courts. And it takes actions on people's behalf after asking them permission. It'll send letters. It will file a complaint. It will say, hey, it's time to follow up on this. Do you want me to follow up on this? And they can say, yeah, let's follow up. And it'll do the steps. If their marketing copy is to be believed, right? That's really, really powerful. And that's something that, AI can do now, not 5 years from now, but now. Things that I would say was science fiction 10 years ago. I also think that AI gives legal aids the opportunity to test solutions quickly. Pro Bononet is a tech provider. We build tech for justice initiatives, nonprofits, legal aid orgs. But what I've seen, and some people call this vibe coding, I can go on Gemini or OpenAI right now and say, hey, let's create a risk detector, web tool for people facing eviction in, this county or in this state or wherever, and go through the steps with it. It will code the entire thing. It'll incorporate changes that I want. It will do everything in the span of under an hour, what I would say would take a tech organization months of dev time to go and do, just me talking to it, just the initial code. Now, I'm not an expert in like legal areas like eviction. I would need an expert to review it, but being able to test out something like that is a huge, huge time saver and cost saver. I do have concerns about AI and access to justice. I think accountability of AI companies to their users when providing legal advice, because they are providing legal advice, is still an open question. There's a case right now in the Middle District of Florida called Garcia v. Character Technologies that I recommend everybody go and find. It's on Court Listener. There was actually an order filed today on the motions to dismiss that talks about the First Amendment defense. It's fascinating, but I think the point of that case and why it's important to me is that this is the first time that someone is trying to hold an AI provider accountable for the words that it says to a user, right? Which is kind of like legal advice. It fits within that rubric. One of their claims in the complaint has to do with the unlicensed practice of like pretending it's a mental health professional, right? That is going to be hugely important in deciding this liability issue and whether or not these companies are ever going to be accountable. At the same time, I do not believe that I want state bars to be the regulators of choice of AI companies. I do not. They're too niche. They have a tendency to overregulate. They're too self-interested. And cases like the TICD case, TIKD v. Florida Bar in Florida, show me that state bars are very self-interested in how and why they try and enforce UPL restrictions. I also worry that hallucinations are going to continue to be a problem. not because they're hallucinations, but because the AI is so confidently wrong on what it does. And it can be confidently wrong and double down. It can be wrong at scale, and it's very, very hard to catch. It can be unaccountable after being wrong. And people really have a tendency to believe technology. There are studies out there that AI chatbots are better at changing people's minds than other people. People believe technology and these chatbots before they believe like their own family members, right? It's really, really fascinating. And I worry about that. I also worry that, as mentioned before, nonprofit funders may see AI as a substitute for adequate funding. I think this is a version of solutionism, right? If you're familiar with that, where we enable the tool as the end goal. I worry about that. I don't know what the solution is to that, because it's true. I think AI is going to enable lawyers to do more work, to take on more clients potentially, but it cannot be seen as a substitute for adequate funding, right? We need to fund first, use the tools then. I also worry that we're going to see AI as an excuse not to change outdated systems and court processes and unjust laws. One of the things that always gets my goat is when there's a bad system in place, like a bad, court process and eviction system, and then a solution is floated like, well, we'll just build an online form to help people navigate this bad system. And I get why we do that. There's a lot of reasons why. But I think we need to think bigger. And I think we need to look at problems at their root cause and root source and go upstream from where people are actually interacting with the court system and try and figure out how we can change things. I don't think AI needs to be rubbed on that as some sort of balm or, cure-all for that. So I know I'm running out of time, but some suggestions. I think user testing is key in everything. I think Alexander mentioned the medical profession. I think one thing that the medical profession does that we don't do in law as a rule is they do testing. They enact, like half of these people get the medicine, half get placebo. We don't tell which is which, and then we follow up. We don't really do that in law. I think we need to do some sort of enhanced user testing. I think we need to rapid prototype things. We need to run things by actual users. We need to put things in people's hands, even if they don't have anything to do with the problem that they're trying to solve. Let them evaluate it. Let them give their opinion. Let's figure out what works in the hands of actual users and go with that. I think we need to be experimenting, as I mentioned, in-house as well, as people talked about. And I think we need to be evaluating the landscape of what people are doing out there, because right now we don't know. There's very little data on who is using OpenAI and Gemini and Claude to solve their legal problems. I guarantee you that a lot of people are. I just don't have the data. It's based on a hunch, right? And I would love to know that. I think that, specializing legal data sets and tools and things like that only gets us so far. I think we need to meet people where we are. So basically, I think we need to look forwards and not backwards. I think we need to think 5 years ahead and look back at the last 2 years as a guide to what's possible, right? If I told you 2 years ago that we could have AI agents that could take action in the real world and send letters, file complaints in court, call people, things like that, you may have said that's, no way. That's not happening anytime in the next 20 years, right? But it's here. Google just released a thing that you can create an 8-second video with just a sentence, right? And I did it. I asked it to, make a video explainer of the rule against perpetuities, and it did. It was terrible. Like words, it had a middle-aged white guy, like standing at a chalkboard explaining the rule against perpetuities. They had like nonsense words on the board. And I was going, wow, this is garbage. Has nothing to do with, with the rule. But then I thought, wait a minute, 5 years ago, this wasn't possible, right? Like 2 years ago, this wasn't possible. And now it is. What's going to be possible in 2 years? I think we need to think ahead, and I think we need to think big.
Thank you. Thank you so much. we're at time, and I really would like to thank all of the panelists, Satish, Alexander, Lisa, Randall, Sam, everyone, Jeff Cox, and all the panelists from the first panel. Aubrey Souza, Zach Sarno, Scott Rains, and Judge Ron Hedges. I really appreciate everyone taking me up on my offer, my offer to come and do this, like, and accepting and taking your time and providing this valuable insight. We're going to be drafting a report, and I realized as I'm talking, there's one more important person I didn't thank. Eunice Benke, who is the organizer at New York State Bar Association for the public interest programs, who does all of these things, and I don't even know how she manages the time. Every time I talk to her, she's doing a million things. She has 5 screens. I learned that the other day, 5. So I was like, this is too many screens, but I think it's great. And thank you, Eunice. I really appreciate it. And thank you to all the panelists, and thank you to everyone that joined. We're going to be drafting a report. This timeline is a relatively ambitious one, so hopefully we'll have a report ready for review this summer or fall, and then we'll move it forward from there. So I
And
really
can I just thank Rez for all of his incredible work and leadership on this committee. So thank you, Rez.
No, thank you, John. I appreciate it. All right, so I think Eunice, I think that's it, right? I think we could end the hearings, and I thank you everyone for your participation.
Thank you.
Thanks.